Hello chess friends and welcome to the of Chess channel and welcome back to our commented chess games played by computer series. So in this series we're following some great games that have been played recently by top engines like Leela C0, Stockfish, Dragon Engine and many more. And we're following now a brilliant tournament that started recently. We're following now the TCEC Cup finals. These cup events are a little bit different than the usual TCEC season because in the cup events we have now the bracket system, we have now the knockout system, which means if you lose the match game then you simply out of the tournament and the winner is then moving up to the next round. So we're following now this great tournament and we're starting now with a brilliant game played by Stockfish against another engine, Amoeba. We have to really say this Amoeba engine is an underdog in the tournament because the rating difference between Stockfish and Amoeba is almost 400 rating points. So you see Stockfish was of course the favorite in this match game, but Stockfish is of course also the favorite to win the whole event. So Stockfish brutalized Amoeba with a clear result, but I wanted to show really a sick and brutal game played by Stockfish against Amoeba in the French defense, in which Stockfish really destroyed the French with a brutal sacrifice. So be prepared, this is simply again 6-6 Stockfish stuff. So I'm sorry that I didn't record recently some videos. I had a cold, my throat was killing me, I couldn't really speak, so now everything is perfectly fine and I will record of course more games, especially played by Stockfish. So let's check out now the game. Here Stockfish opened with the move e4, we have now e6, the French, we have now knight to c3, d5 and d4, and the move knight to f6, which is now the normal variation, the classical variation of the French defense. And the cool part is that this was actually the last prearranged move by the organizer, and that's what I like about this cup events of the TCEC seasons, because the prearranged line is not so bad. Most of the times we'll see that one engine has to play maybe a dubious opening, which gives maybe an evaluation of +1 for one engine, and then especially an engine like Stockfish is brutalizing its opponent if it gets of course a huge advantage in an early stage of the game. But now with the move knight to f6 we have reached a normal position which is playable for white and for black. We cannot really say that it's immediately winning for white because black played the move knight to f6. So as I said, from this point on the engines have to calculate the position for themselves. So after move knight to f6, Stockfish went into the Steinitz variation, which is one of the best ways here to proceed. After move e5 we have now knight to d7 and now f4, which is of course the normal idea in the French defense, because we have now this block pawn structure in the center. White is coordinating the attack towards the king side because the pawn chain is showing us where we should attack, and of course black is trying the attack on the queen side because this pawn chain is also showing black the direction of the attack. Black is of course proceeding with ideas of c5, maybe a6, b5 and similar stuff. Black is simply attacking the queen side. So here c5 immediately as promised. We have now knight to f3 and here bishop to e7, and the cool part is that my Stockfish engine at home evaluates this move already as an inaccuracy, because in this opposite side attack games like this, as we said, white is attacking the king side, black is attacking the queen side, you have to be really active, which means you should always pressure your opponent. You should always create moves that are pressing and creating some attacking opportunities on that side where you are better. So I think a more accurate move would be simply to proceed with the move knight to c6. At least this move is creating some pressure around the square d4. But after move bishop to e7, here Stockfish proceed with bishop to e3 and again a6, which is again not the most aggressive move. Again, I think knight to c6 simply here is continuing more pressure around the square d4. So as I said, it's not maybe a huge mistake, but I simply don't like this move order that this engine Amoeba played. And here Stockfish makes now a huge decision, plays now move d takes c5. And for instance, there is only one game in the database played in top grandmaster level in this particular line, so only one game has been played in this particular variation, this particular sideline of the French defense. After move d takes c5, black has to make already the decision with which piece to take. And here Amoeba tried knight to c5. If you play bishop to c5, the problem is now I think you're leaving a little bit your g5 square unprotected, so that's why knight to c5. We have now a3 and now kingside castling here by Amoeba, and now the fun already starts, because here h4 immediately played by Stockfish. Stockfish creates an immediate attack, although Stockfish king is still in the center. It's a risky choice, but you know how Stockfish plays the game. When Stockfish smells some blood, then Stockfish Stockfish is creating an immediate flank attack. So here b5 played by Amoeba, which is also perfect idea. You have to attack, of course, your opponent's side on the board. Here in the continuation we have knight to g5, and here we have queen to c7. If you play here instead of this move maybe knight to e4, it's not so good because it gives, I think, here a clarified idea. We can play knight to e4, d takes e4, knight to g5. You can maybe play h6, and after knight takes e4, you see now bishop to h4. Okay, you have your fun with one check, but now after g3, white is solving all of the positional problems. You can maybe try queen to d1. Okay, rook to d1, bishop to e7, but you see now the activity that white gained here is simply too much to handle. I think for black. Bishop to g2 will happen. We have also opportunities to play knight to d6. This is now really weak square in black's camp. We can even play c4, c5. We can even play bishop to c5, knight to c5. So simply too many great attacking opportunities here for white, and I think black is simply strategically lost. So as I said, b5 natural idea. Here in the continuation we have now knight to g5 played by Stockfish, with ideas to maybe sneak in with the queen here to h5, and then maybe even threaten some checkmates here around the square h7. So here in the continuation we have queen to c7, and now a brilliant choice again played by Stockfish, which in the beginning seemed to me like a strange idea, but it's really a great idea here by Stockfish. Stockfish played now bishop to c5. Giving up the bishop pair in an early stage of the game can be a risky choice, but at least it comes with a great idea. Here you have two choices. In the continuation of the game, Amoeba tried queen to c5. If you try bishop to c5, the problem is now queen to d3 is happening, and in this particular scenario you have only two defensive moves. You have the move g6, or you have to move f5. g6 is losing immediately because you get simply h5, and now there is simply too much pressure on the h file. H takes g6 will happen, queen to h3, and the game is over. So the more correct way would be maybe to play the move f5, but it's again not so good because you can simply g4. We want to open this long light for diagonal, and if you try to kick away the knight, it's not better because you get simply g takes f5. These are really brilliant tactics that Stockfish has prepared here. Even if you try to take out the knight, nothing dramatically changed, because here after h6 g5, here you can maybe try rook to f5, but now queenside castling with queen to h3, bishop to d3 are simply great moves here for white, and I think black is simply tactically lost. The engine get home gives here already a +3 evaluation for white, although white is down the whole piece. So really sick tactics already in the early stage of the game. So that's why after move queen to c7 and bishop to c5, here queen to c5 played by Amoeba, but again this idea queen to d3, and the problem is now with bishop to g5, h takes g5, the h file gets open, so black can never really take out this very annoying knight on g5. That's actually the main problem of this game. That's why here g6 played by Amoeba, and we have now queenside castling immediately by Stockfish. Stockfish is preparing now this move h5. This is now the most important strategical element of this game, and now Amoeba is trying at least some kind of a counterattack, plays now the move b4, but now comes a brilliant tactic that Stockfish played. Stockfish played now a sick move knight to h7. The problem is now, of course, if you take king to h7, then you get h5, and everything gets open. Then queen to h3 again, and again black is simply tactically lost. So taking out here the knight is not an option. That's why here in the continuation of the game, Amoeba tried b takes c3, takes out this knight. The problem is now for white, you should never go into this line. Taking out the rook is not the most important tactical element here. After move knight to f8, black can play here simply c takes b2. After king to b2, king to f8, and here maybe you could try to open the h file, but actually it's not such a good move here for white. After move g takes h5, rook to h5, black can actually escape. You can gain maybe one check, but now the king will escape, or maybe we can cover even with the bishop. So here the engine gives a +2 evaluation for black. So this is not something that white should do. So taking out here after move b takes c3, taking out the rook is not the most important idea here. The most important idea is to open files, open diagonals against the king. So here Stockfish already sacrificed the piece. Stockfish proceeds with the normal idea h5. We have now g5, which is also a good move here by Amoeba. It's the only defensive move because we want to create at least some kind of blockade here. We want to at least force maybe white to take here, f takes g5, and then at least you don't have some attacks on the g file. The pawn is standing in your own way. But here Stockfish found, after move g5, some other great attacking opportunities. Knight to g5, we have now c takes b2, king to b1, and now bishop to g5. The problem is now after queen to g3 and king to h8, the problem is now you cannot take here with the queen. Queen to g5 is not an option because you get here queen takes a3, and then you can maybe play some perpetuals because black is also threatening a checkmate. You can play just a couple of checks and the game will probably end in a draw. So that's why you have to take out with the pawn, f takes g5. But now we have a similar position in which the pawn is simply standing in the way of white's queen. White's queen cannot attack anymore black's king in the continuation of the game. Okay, black is up a whole pawn, up a whole piece, but at least the queen on g3 is protecting now the pawn on a3. Now this idea is not working. Queen takes a3 with queen to a1. So at least white has defended the position somehow. Black's king is of course also in danger. Now as from f takes g5, black has to bring more pieces into the game. So that's why rook to g1, at least protecting the king for white. We have now g6. The problem is now you cannot, of course, take f takes g6, a takes g6 is opening the h file, and again, it's simply game over. So that's why here after move g6, we have now rook to g7 and now rook to d3. This is a very important move because you want to play freely with your queen. We want to play maybe something like queen to f4, queen to h6, but you have to protect really your a3 pawn. If you lose the a3 pawn, then of course black is always threatening the checkmate on a1. So rook to d3, perfect move here by Stockfish. But not that this move is only defending. I think you can also use somehow maybe the rook on the third rank. You can play rook to g3, rook to h3, rook to f3 if necessary. So the rook is protecting maybe the third rank, but it can be also used as a great attacking piece in the continuation of the game. So here in the continuation, knight to d7, Amoeba is trying to get some more pieces into the game. We have queen to f4, queen to f8, and now rook to f3. We have king to g8, of course, now with ideas finally maybe to play f takes g6 and maybe trade off more pieces, simplifying the game by trading off the queens, because if black trades the queens in the continuation of the game, then black is probably winning the game because black is up a whole piece. But Stockfish is not allowing this scenario. Stockfish plays queen to g5. We have now bishop to b7 with ideas maybe to play d4, discovered attack against the rook on f3. We have now rook to h4 and now queen to d8. Amoeba is trying desperately to trade off the queens because Stockfish is of course on the attacking side. You want to really get rid of this annoying queens. Even if you try here something like d4, it can be met with rook to f7. Rook to f7 is a brilliant move because queen to f7 is of course not an opportunity. G takes f7 comes with a check. So you would be forced here to play rook to f7, but now simply g takes f7 comes again with a check. You have to play king to h8 and now rook to d4. The problem is now if you take queen to f7, then queen to h6, and now if you cover, of course, then we can takes, and the problem is now rook to d7 is happening and you lose also the bishop on b7. So this is not a possibility. This is not the way to defend. After move rook to h4, d4, we have seen it's not an opportunity here for black. Black tried now queen to d8, tried here to trade off the queens. We have now g takes f7 again with this check. We have king to h8 and now queen to f4. The threat is of course now h6 h6 and also bishop to d3. Finally include this bishop into the game. So black's king is a little bit naked. Black again needs to bring more pieces into the defense. So here Amoeba tried again this annoying idea, queen to g5 to trade off the queens. Stockfish played h6. The problem is now if you take, of course, then first we take with the check and then afterwards we can take out the queen. So here in the continuation, after move h6, we have now rook to g6. We have bishop to d3, attacking the rook. queen takes f4, rook to f4, and now after rook to g2, you see we have now this promotion, and all of this brilliant tactics that Stockfish created here were simply to reach this position. Rook to f8, we have rook to g8, but now after rook to g8, king to g8, we have seen now a brilliant tactic by Stockfish, but it leads now into winning endgame here for white. White has now this extra pawn on the h file and can of course take out also the pawn on b2. So black is simply losing this endgame. White is up a whole pawn, and the problem is now the king will also sneak in through dark square here. It's a clear path for white's king. The problem is always that black's king has to stay here on the king side and has to protect this potential promotion on the h file. So king to f7, we have king to c3. The king is of course marching towards the queen side. We have now c4, d takes c4, bishop to c4. We have now a5, and now a brilliant move here by Stockfish. Bishop takes e6, king to e6 is not an opportunity because we'll simply play h7. So that's why king to g6. We have now king to c5, king takes h6, here king to d6, bishop to e8. Now a great move here by Stockfish. Bishop to d7, bishop to f7, and now e6, bishop to g8, e7. Here a promotion, takes, and in this position Amoeba resigns. So great game here by Stockfish. Interesting line of the French defense. Let's go back. I really liked this idea after bishop to e7, then here simply to undermine the pressure. Now h4, then here simply knight to g5, bishop to c5. You see this knight was really annoying. The attack on the h file was simply too much to handle for this engine Amoeba, and as I said, Stockfish won the match game against Amoeba, moved up into the next stage. We'll see now what will happen. Probably, as I said, we'll witness this brutal super final between Stockfish against Lila C0. So okay, I hope that you enjoyed this game. I really enjoyed it a lot. Great tactics in the French defense. If you want to see more brutal attacks like this, check out my commented chess games play by computer series with some more brilliant gameplay by Stockfish, Alpha Zero, Lila Z0, and many more. And if you want to see humans battling it out in their best chess games, check out my commented chess games play by the humans, the best chess games of all time series. Here's also the link. And if you like this content, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. See you soon with some more videos, and what to say, chess is the best, of course.